Today we are joined by two teaching instructors here at UW-Milwaukee, Cynthia Brinich-Langlois, who is an artist whose work explores how humans shape and interpret landscapes through altered topographies, cartographic systems, and ecological relationships. She combines her background in environmental biology and studio art in her printmaking practice. With an MFA from the University of New Mexico, where she participated in land arts of the American West, Brinich-Langlois has exhibited internationally, and her works are held in several prestigious collections, including the Nevada Museum of Art. Joseph Mougel is Associate Professor of Photography at UW-Milwaukee, and he explores identity, cultural heritage, and military experience through photography and multimedia art. As a first-generation American and former Marine, he brings unique perspectives to his creative practice. Mougel holds an MFA from the University of New Mexico, where he participated in land arts of the American West. His work has been exhibited internationally and is featured in several museum collections and publications. And both are here to join us today to talk about AI as a catalyst, empowering students to focus on what really matters. Thank you both.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. So I'm Cynthia Brinich-Langlois, and we're going to talk a little bit today about how we've used AI tools in some of our art and design classes that we've taught, and also sort of how some of this has really emerged as like student initiated kind of way, which is kind of cool. Like they do something and we're like, oh, that's a really great idea. And I'll talk about my experiences first, and then Joseph will kind of go over some of the his background in the photography and imaging area, and then do a hands-on activity. So, all right. So I teach a professional practices class for artists. It is the art QLB, the quantitative literacy part B class. So they have to make a business plan, which is a little bit of a heavy lift for artists coming in with maybe a little bit of an aversion to mathematics. So we talk about business, and a lot of them will go into freelance careers and so on. So it's a really good thing for them to have some background in. So they have to identify a need for whatever product or service they're proposing. They need to describe what makes their business unique. They need to calculate a target market size. It's a math class. They have to find some competitors and compare and contrast them. The big math part is projecting financials for their first year of operation. And then they have to present the business plan to the class. And this is sort of the point at which we started to integrate some of these AI tools into the process. So there's some pros with the business plan presentations. These are art majors at studio art. So we have like BAs and BFAs. We also have a number of film, animation, and theater students in the group. So we have lots of creative majors. They have lots of interesting ideas. This is real world application, right? They're putting together a business plan that they could potentially use to actually start a business if they want to once they graduate, or even while they're a student. We have some students who are small business owners. They collaborate with peers, and I put this in the pros category because I think a lot of students come into this not feeling that it's a positive thing, but over the course of the semester, as they're working in a group on this, they realize that having more brains to bounce ideas off of is really beneficial. But there are some things that we struggle with. So a lot of our students have some reluctance surrounding math. That's why we developed the class. They weren't able to get through the math department's QLB level courses, so we came up with our own. And there's a lot of unfamiliar concepts and vocabulary. Of course, there's whole like degrees in business, and we're doing a 1 semester class. So we're kind of doing a very bare bones thing, but we still have to introduce them to a lot of unfamiliar concepts. And business plans seem so serious, right? So this is an example of what a business plan presentation looked like. I'm going through it real fast here, but looked like several semesters ago. So it has all the information. It's pretty dry. And these are art students, right? So this was drudgery. I mean, like it's a ceramics based thing. They're making some kind of home wares. I don't know. They did all the things. They did the competitive positioning. They did all the financials and everything. But when they gave the presentation, they're just up there kind of reading through their slides, and it's not very fun for everyone at all. So a year ago in the fall, one group decided to take this in a very different direction. So they kind of went overboard with the design of their presentation, and they used a lot of generative AI to map up what their products look like. So this is like fun to look at. I mean, it's a little overwhelming maybe, but this was sort of their aesthetic as you know, they're as artists, like their personalities really came through in this. And they really, there was some weird thing with Jennifer Coolidge, I'm not sure, but I'm gonna pause it. So this is the AI generative imagery that they came up with because they wanted to have images of, well, what did they say, like girls, gays, and queers playing cornhole? Like that was their target market, right? Cornhole is too masculine, and you know we got to make it more accessible to these other demographics. So they couldn't find any photos of their target market playing cornhole, so they needed to make it up, right? And so generative AI gave them that ability. Now, I mean, there's some like weird, mushy things going on with some of their faces. This is again a year ago. The tools have developed a lot in that time, but you know, fall 2023, this was kind of fun and got the message across. I mean, she's dissolving into the grass. So going forward, we made including visuals a requirement for the presentation. So they needed to give us some kind of visual reference for what that product is. AI is optional, though I think a lot of students would end up using AI tools without even realizing it. So this was a presentation that they designed in Canva. And I don't think they even recognized that a lot of that content is AI supported. They just made a really nice looking presentation for you know, a business about basically cleaning up your studio, like it has hazardous materials and like you know, any kind of mess, they'd come in and just like take care of it. So this was you know, moving forward, we wanted to make sure that we kind of kept that energy from the, you know, the original group that came up with, you know, a way to show their product, and carry that through in subsequent presentations. This is another example. This group was I think 3 photographers, and they were proposing to do a wedding photography business, and they were not wedding photographers. One of them was a landscape photographer, though. So in order to present examples of their product, which is the wedding photographs, they took their own photographic imagery and asked generative AI to place couples into the scenes. So they're using their actual artwork and then incorporating you know, the product into that. And they, you know, people would ask them questions. So there's like a Q&A thing afterwards, like, you got all these brides and these white dresses out in the landscape. How do you keep them so white? You know, and I mean, they had answers like, oh, well, we hike out in our regular hiking clothes and we change into the wedding dresses on site. And so they had a whole rationale for how that would work, even though these weren't really their they're straight photographs. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Joseph. I can click onto this. So he's going to talk a little bit about the photography imaging area and how they've used it more directly in those classes.
No, it was fun kind of going and trying to find images here. And it's like, I'm a bit earlier on this here because, photographers, we've had many like kind of crises. Digital was a big one for us in the 90s right here. We're like, oh my God, it's done, it's dead. Boy, did we not know what was going to happen when AI came around right there. So for me, it was actually just important that I know it's like, don't force students to engage with it. For me, it was like, they have to. We have to engage with it because if you're going to be a professional photographer working with the medium, you have to understand how these tools work and also recognize the fact that this machine learning exists in a lot of stuff. And this is prior to Adobe like really integrating a lot of like very powerful tools into their software that cuts a lot of our work time down. And can also probably bring in some questions about authenticity of one's work right there. So I wanted students to kind of engage with that. So one of the things I started talking about a lot within my own practices, I work with historical process, so I'm always working with like things from early 19th century with contemporary digital. So hybrid, photo and AI, like where is the balance between those two, which is retouching. It is, and it already was a lot of very powerful tools that exist there. Expanding the canvas, we cropped, it's taken away me like yelling at students that, but, commenting kindly about, when they crop someone's foot off at the bottom right there because they weren't paying attention. These are like small little details, but like for them, it's like, if this is your profession, this is what you do. Generative fill, which is, photographers, we have to deal with all of the garbage that's in the world, everything in the world that you don't want. And this is like a game changer for us. The number, I started off with film. So taking a photograph, but having to pay attention, like, okay, make sure there's nothing in the scene that I'm going to regret. I can't take that with analog. That is not even a question. And the other thing that I found interesting also was the text prompts to AI. And that was like a lot of the kind of early ones that you would find with DALL-E, with Midjourney, and then open source AI. No, OpenArt's what it is now. That's what I'm using. But Midjourney is what I kind of was using a lot. It was nice early on in the 2022. A lot of them were excited for people to use their stuff, so I could get access to it. I can get my students access to it, and they can do some work with it. And some of my students, I started talking about sketching, talking about aversions. Artists have aversions to mathematics. Photographers have aversion to drawing and sketching. And so I would always sort of have them do what I refer to as Google sketches. It's like, okay, you have an idea and you need to visualize it because we're visual people. So they would just download a bunch of images and kind of sloppily put them together in Photoshop. We could do some sketching with AI right now to start thinking about like what something might look like and maybe tweak it to kind of get it closer to what would eventually be the sketch for a photograph. And then there is digital imaging. It's the area of photography and imaging. And so with that right there, thinking about like the fact that, almost every photograph has become some sort of hybrid, especially with digital tools. And again, like I said, my interest, I do a lot of historical processes as well. So AI, I had a class and I just made an assignment. See what this does. Image to text. Let's have a conversation. And it was not about the work they were making. It was about the conversation about this tool that you were all going to grapple with right there. This is the boogeyman in the photo dark room, so to speak. And things that we found out about AI, it was pretty okay at making boring images, which made me a little bit panicked about our intro to photo class right there, because that's what they do is make a lot of boring images. So we do ask them to send us our raw files, which you can't AI generate, so we do have a way around that. It also made images that just kind of went off the rails a little bit. And then some of them would go really off the rails. And again, it was just interesting, like, what is this? Like, what are these tools that we're using? And this is when everything was raster based, which is pixel based. So now they've gotten into more using vector based graphics right there, which has a whole other training. And this stuff is also crowdsourcing. I mean, it was just like being trained on whatever was available out there. And you got some pretty strange things. Though this kind of what started getting me thinking about like, what does it mean to like start sketching some of these images and then maybe like coming in and creating? So that was one semester. This is the next semester. These are cyanotypes, just blueprinting right there. It's just like learning how to mix your own chemistry, tweak the chemistry, how to make a good digital negative, learning whether or not you want expressive lines, learning how to do toning and stuff like just introducing them to a historical process. But boy, were the images just like all over the place. I have an interest in the environment, and I gave them a prompt to create hybrid creatures. And I told them about and I had them like think about the prompts and how to stylistically bring them together, how to maybe think about this on like, what do you want to say about the environment? What is your stance right there? And so, there's definitely some trash. You got some ones, you got some like very nightmarish things right here that kind of started happening with the kind of hybridization. Some of them started being mixed with trash. This one was one thinking about nuclear fallout and radiation. So they were doing a lot of research on various sort of aspects. And, they became fantastical right there. I did say, like, how do we cite this? So I was like, what did you use? Most of them used Midjourney at this time because it was still free. And I had them cite it for me. So it's like, I wanted to acknowledge that they were using this tool here. And this is something that I still, not when I still encourage my students to do, especially, not when they're using it for retouching, but when they're using it for their source imagery right there. We're still kind of like asking that question, like, is it my art if I am like learning how to craft a prompt to get this to produce this artwork for me? Because now we can start talking about like, I have studio assistants. I train my studio assistants and I send them out. I do this. I send them out to go take photographs based on what I want them to do. Like, is that really that different from AI? And I'm asking myself that question right there, because I'm having you. Now that brings into the ethical things. Like, I pay my students salary to do. Now that's a whole other follow-up. But I think it's also something for my students to be aware of. Like, is this taking away existing jobs that allows you to move up through the ranks? So again, I have lots of conversations about them. Pretty cool. This is another student for capstone, and he had a very ambitious project, and he was using archival images of Southeast Asia. He was Hmong, and he was from the UWM library, so he was using those images. So he's already using found images for it. He was making that's his own photograph. This is a photograph he viewed. But then he started generating images because the project became so big for him to do, and also like his resources to kind of like meet his vision. And so he started taking like photographs and using them as models that at this point that we can start feeding your own images into AI. And so use your images as a base to kind of create an image based on like, something futuristic. And that was because, again, this is his final exhibition, and those are his images. He is accomplished. He can make amazing photographs right there, but there are limits to time and budget. And I want him to fully realize this project, which had this book that also went into this kind of, because he was talking about the Hmong immigrant experience, but he also wanted to kind of use this format of the kind of science fiction narrative. But in order to get further along with that, he needed to create other images, and they existed within the book right there. But then he was also using found images because these were historical images that he did credit back that he was also including right there. And so he kind of wanted to have this kind of experience right there, but he couldn't meet that experience if it wasn't for AI being able to generate those images. And when he came to me, he said, he's like, so what do you think about this? I was like, this makes me insanely uncomfortable, but we're going to do it, because how are we going to be able to understand that space of discomfort unless we actually make the work and then acknowledge this is what we're doing, but then have that conversation about what does it mean to use these tools right here. And maybe the fact that, it's not just the boogeyman, but maybe it's also a way of us kind of being able to kind of leap forward too. And we just have to kind of think about the ethics of it. So yeah, retouching. As I've been introducing this into my class and getting my students more comfortable with it, they also had an aversion to AI. The photo students were like, to be fair, when Photoshop started doing it back in, when I was teaching in like 2008, Photoshop and showing some of the tools, I had students like, no, this is cheating. Like, now this is kind of absurd to think about, some 14 years or 15 years later. And my students just do it. It's not a requirement, but it's like a way of like, okay, the limitations of my lighting studio, okay, what do I do? Okay, I can get the gist of, I can get the lighting, I can have the right reflections coming off that red paper and all that stuff. But dear God, the paper's too small. But the student, they're just doing it now, and they're using it as a retouching tool, which I actually find really fantastic, because quite frankly, this is what the industry is doing. Like, still his own images. He's just dealing with his own. And quite the other thing too is like again, what do you do when you don't have the production team to create a set? And we go out. He's doing his own photography. He has a idea, and then he goes and uses AI generation to kind of like complete and finish a scene right there. Again, it's like a collaborator. He could also, spend a long time trying to like either find that space and composite it in, or actually construct that space, or pay someone who is more skilled than he is at painting it in. But he's able to realize his ideals and create really polished portfolios. Again, I talked to the students about like acknowledgement. Now there are limitations. Pixels are a limitation right there. A lot of this stuff is low res. There's ways around it. And that kind of ends my portion of it. But now we're going to talk a little bit about some tools that you actually all have available to you, which is, has anyone here heard of Adobe Firefly? Adobe Firefly is a text to image. As a UWM employee, you have access to Adobe through your username and account. And it's basically some of the tools that I was using before, except now Adobe is rolling it in. Adobe is just, they're just rolling it in. They did beta for about 4 months.
Yeah.
And then they were like, yep, we're going for it. And the beta kind of like hung around not quite a year, and they just gave up on the beta because they were just like, yeah, people are hungry for these tools today. Nice thing about, maybe kind of, about Adobe Firefly is this is imagery in which Adobe has license to use to train their AIs. Oh, right. There. And you can do references, like you can do a style reference, which is like you can use your own photograph to do a style. You can also use your own photographs to figure out a composition. And they do prompt you like, hey, is this your image? And again, it's trained on Adobe stock images right there, which whether they knew it or not, everyone signed an agreement to do that at a time. I'll tear into that ethics as well, whether or not that was up front in the initial. And it's accessible through an internet browser, which means also you have access to it, your students have access to it. So again, something to be aware of if you're looking like, oh, how my students, if you're thinking about what Cynthia's doing, generate their own images. Yeah, where do you go? Share.
So should people pull that up? How do
Yeah.
they get
Yeah,
there?
if you want to pull it up, you're
Yeah,
welcome
we're
to do
gonna
it.
do it up here for anyone who doesn't have.
So question, do I put my UWM address in to do?
Yeah, and then it's
your
going to
school
prompt
account?
you on whether or not an individual or a company, and you go with the company. And then you do all the fun things of logging in.
Our students have access to Adobe products as well.
Well, no, on
On
campus computers, they have it, but Firefly, they should be able to have access to it as a free tool that exists right now.
You just get a limited amount of credits, right?
Yeah.
So many
Yeah.
images that you can create.
But if they're on a campus computer, that changes things considerably for them.
Does anybody?
Yeah, it's a little bit, it gets kind of strange whenever they're like, there's this other thing called Adobe Express that our students have great access to, and then it evaporated. But they can still have access to it. They just have to create a personal account to get access to it. So there's this constant shifting and lots of time with me talking to IT about why.
Like, what did the university pay for this year?
Yeah.
So on the campus computer, they have access to it, but then also with a personal account, they have like limited amount of credits with it right there. But then with their own account, they can have, pretty much as much as they want. Yes.
So what's the difference then between Express and Firefly?
Oh, Express is just
It's like a web.
Express
like a
is just a
web
web
page.
publisher right there. Sorry, I was just mentioning
Yeah,
a
I
tool
didn't
that we
know
lost.
that
Yeah.
that's like.
No,
it's
it's
replacing
yeah.
it.
Can't.
Um,
So do you want me to
But this is sort of like Dolly or Mid Journey.
It's Dolly, Mid-Journey, trained on Adobe's images. So yeah,
How much would I type in?
I don't know, what are people interested in? Normally when I do this, this is how I make my test prints for my printers and
You
everything.
do cats.
I do cats all the time. It's just a running joke with my students that the world has more cat images.
I mean,
in it,
obviously, there's a cat right
Yeah.
here. A cat native
Yes.
black.
Do we access it from our UWM website or just?
No, just
You just go to Firefly itself.
like if you search for Adobe Firefly.
But if you go to Adobe Firefly itself, and then you go to log in, you just use
You
your
have to log in
UWM
with WM.
credentials to do that right there. And then you make sure you say you're part of a company.
Well, people are loading in. Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
So I like to use Premiere Pro a lot. It's way outside of my wheelhouse, but I really like it for recording lectures and being able to go back in and cut out something stupid I said. Is there AI working its way into that already?
Yeah, there's a lot of the like there's filters that you can put on that will clean up. Like it'll kind of scan through your audio and
And find
remove
all the
ums or like pops that
All my mouse clicking?
yeah, like all the clicks and things. Yeah, so they
Is that Premiere?
Premiere
yeah,
has-
Premiere has that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if there's something that was a tedious task, there's an AI that Adobe's adopting in order to get rid of that tedious task right there. And definitely cleaning audio. I mean, you were always able to clean audio, but it was just like you constantly like making little micro cuts here and there. I don't know.
Run with the cats.
Yeah, run with
Yeah.
You may need to give it a field or something, but yeah.
so.
Papalona.
All right.
Oh, I'm in art. Here, let's go to
Yeah.
photo.
Yeah, let's do photo, let's regenerate. I mean, though you can do art. I mean, I think it's raster based. There we go. And from this right here, you can download it, you can rate it up and down. You can also upscale it, which is actually make it more pixels than what it actually has right there.
Did you want to do a reference?
Yes, I can do a
If
reference.
you go down to the Finder, I have your.
Yeah, if you flip the sheet over, you'll see I was playing with it yesterday. And like this sort of like editing that is so simple.
Yeah, so what I'm doing right now is I'm just adding a composition reference and then I'm going to add a style reference right here.
Can you explain a little, what does that mean?
Yeah, so a composition reference is like basically like how the image, like how elements in the image are arranged on it. Style reference would be like the color or textures or things like that that might be part of it. So I'm just using some images like this. I'm just using like this image of a reflector in front of a Mawson because I'm using that circle shape and seeing how much it will take that circle shape in. And this is just a photograph of an herbarium that I have. And so you can change the strengths of it once we, get that all sort of set up right here. You can go ahead and
I think if you just click generate in the lower right corner. That's covering it up.
oh, okay. I was like, wait a
Yeah, it's
second.
hiding, yeah.
I was like, wait a second. I know it's on here. And so we'll see what happens. And now I have a cat on a plate. Or cat, like so. You can see that it's like it's these plants. It's
Style
a style reference. And so it decides to do that. And I can tell it like how strong do I really want that to be. So I can bring it a little bit stronger. So we're gonna, we're definitely gonna get a circle. Definitely gonna get plants around it. So this is where it's like you're bringing some of your elements in there. You can see that coloring that's coming in. That is from this. And so if I bring that up a little bit more, visual intensity is bringing more of the actual elements in there versus this, the strength is, a little bit less of that. So you can kind of see it brings a little bit more of that color. But then if I back all these down, it's like forever. Just you can see now that like it's losing some of that color that I had in there before. And if I go and say let's see, where is this one of my good autumn leaves? There we go. I'm going to upload that in there because it's got some greenery and stuff. I'm going to bring that up. Generate. Now I should get red stuff around it. because I photograph fall leaves right there. And so,
And now it's like a barrel.
yeah, it's a barrel.
They changed
Well,
it.
because what it's seeing here is as a stick. So it's like, oh, wait a
So have you
second.
seen is that the references that you're talking about bottom
Yeah, the
left?
style, the style reference.
Yeah, so it's got that in there. And again, like I said, I can.
Then can you like edit one of those pictures individually? So if you wanted to replace the cat with a dog, but leave everything else.
You can do some editing with regards to that.
It doesn't let you do that. You can tell it to generate a dog instead of a cat.
You can see here, like it couldn't even bring itself to do a cat for me. So I have to bring this down a little bit.
And now it's putting a cup inside of it.
Yeah, no longer a cat.
Even though regular cats and fast still the
There we go.
cats.
Yeah, now the cats are back in there because I've reduced the strength of this right here. So yeah, I mean, again, kind of sort of a little bit crazy on how powerful that is.
How did you do this editing? Like, is it hard? Because I have an image, but.
Yeah, so he's missing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
So I asked it to do a reflection in a mirror, but it doesn't actually do the reflection. So you see your face isn't oriented right. Yeah,
So I'm trying to get the one in Photoshop to do a rabbit from the front and it couldn't do that. Like it would only do rabbits from the side.
yeah, but it's like two people. One is, yeah, the reflection isn't right and they're two different people.
Yeah,
But it's clearly supposed to be a reflection.
yeah.
So
It is not perfect,
yeah,
but
so
it is fast.
it is fast. I
Really
mean,
fast.
so I can come back here and oops, this is me being able to go. I don't want to do
That cat has two tails.
So, question, are these real cats that it's pulling from the internet or are these
Well,
composite?
So this is trained on Adobe stock images and Creative Commons, like from like Wikimedia Commons and Flickr Commons. So these are images that have a very permissive license associated with them. So the AI learned what a cat
looks like.
And so it's creating a cat based on its understanding of things tagged with the word cat.
Yeah, so
But
this
it's
is
not-
where metadata
This
comes
is
in.
not a copy of it. They did not isolate a cat
They actually pixel by pixel built a cat
based on how they understand.
and what a cat should look like. So
And
those,
obviously, they're missing some things
there's
in their
devil coordinated tails
understanding
right there.
of a
So
cat.
there are moments where it still doesn't do very well. And they're kind of wanting you to guys give feedback whether this is working or
This
not
cat, oh,
working.
this one's even better. Look at
Yeah.
that one.
Like the cat, yeah, the cat's
It's just like three cats like merged together, like a
But this
Great
is also a little bit of my style reference because there is a stick that goes across my image right here. And so it is also, now it's like having this problem where it's like, wait a second, but you want me to match the style with cats? Okay, I'm going to match it with cats and you're going to get a mutant cat.
I got a cat human hybrid and I
Um,
just cannot. Like there's a human and the human and the cat are sharing a shirt
Oh, they're together, it's like in the shirt.
and then the human is holding the heart, which is what I started with. The
That's,
heart.
that's super easy with the real heart, yeah.
So have you used this to like create slides that show more inclusivity of people or, you know, like? Have you used it?
I have not, but I do
You're
know.
using it for plants.
Yeah, I'm using it for plants myself. But I do know, I mean, I don't know which ones are off the top of my head, but I know that there are some ad agencies and stuff that have taken their images and have just kind of changed, you know, the content of who is represented within those images. So yes,
Okay.
for that, it is being done. That's kind of an ethical line that I kind of question a little bit purely because I'm like, let's make a real photograph right there. But one can also argue what's real when I can just stage something versus I can generate something. Like I could just stage that image and
Right.
take a photograph. Does that make that more a representation of reality than one that's AI generated? That's a kind of ethical question I ask students. Yes.
So is there a maximum number of images you can generate?
Not with the license through UWM. There is not enough. And you can do things like here, I can do some generative fill. So I can, come in here and I think this is like, where I can just I'm just erasing them out. And
Oh,
then,
maybe we can turn them into dogs.
yeah, this is getting to what,
That's how I did Abraham Lincoln in a sweatshirt.
I mean,
In
he
the
does look
back.
really nice in this
I
one.
just erased. I just erased his jacket.
Dog.
3 years.
So we got a 3-year dog. And other things you can do. Okay, so
Are there more dogs that might have the proper number of years? That one looks a little,
that's a
that
little
one's
better.
still.
Yeah, I mean, I can also expand it, or pan, which are things that would.
Keep at the bottom.
And so now I can come to expand, and so I don't know what's going to do. I just expanded without a prompt. It's probably just going to add me more leaves. It may add another dog.
So I think the answer is yes, and you may have already said this. So can you load your own images then?
That's what he did.
Yeah.
Well, the style references, but I can't like
In
edit.
this, you can't edit your image.
You can do that in Photoshop though.
I was doing, that's what I got Abraham Lincoln. I pulled it off of, this is a February 1865 picture image that I pulled, and I put in the, because this changes all the time, doesn't
Yeah.
it? So I mean, if you go to like, I can't remember where it was. If you go back to the beginning, where you're editing any images,
Yeah.
I think it's on back. Yeah. I was playing with it all day yesterday, and I know how these technologies change on you all the time. Right there. If I scroll down, if you scroll down on the left on that bar, maybe it's text to image even back farther. But I was able to upload an image, and then I could start editing that. And
Okay.
then that's where I started playing with Abraham Lincoln's sweatshirt and his jacket, and it took off his beard, and it did much better than Batman versus Superman with Superman's mustache. So the one image made Abraham Lincoln look like Kiefer Sutherland. So it's a different image.
Well,
Yeah,
the
Adam.
limitations here. You can't type a known figure's name into here and expect it to generate it for you. It'll. I mean, and I say no, a known contemporary figure. You
Yeah.
can probably get into some historical figures.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but known
Yeah.
contemporary figure, no. So none of you want to make some imagery of Bezos or Elon Musk or any politician that's not going to do it. I've tried to see where it breaks just out of curiosity.
Yeah. Nice.
So they do have safeguards. Yeah, that's got to be a new feature. I know, and it's not something I've looked at for in here. I actually use OpenArt because I'm actually able to put my own images into OpenArt, and so I'm training it on my own photographs. And that's just because of the research I'm doing right now. I'm more interested in it. So I don't use this as much as I used to. And quite frankly, I just make this available to my students as a sketching tool. We're mostly using Photoshop at this point in time. But I think for some of your purposes right here, I think this can be kind of a really interesting. I mean, the thing about it is like Photoshop is kind of a bit dumber when it comes to generating images. It's really good at removing things. It's really good at expanding things. One thing about Photoshop though is if you try to do too much, you will see a difference in quality. And I asked the Adobe people this one time when I was at a conference, and they said, well, it's because we are not patient for quality. And so if they were able to deliver you the quality that you want, some things that you ask for would take 3 hours for it to generate. So they decided not to even make it an option. And so the only way around that is you do a tiny section at a time on your images and you'll get the quality, but it's like limited to like 1024 by 1024 is the maximum pixels that it'll send to you. So that's a very small area. It's like a 3 inch by 3 inch space on a printable image. You have to look to see where that is. But again, like I said, you can also you can feed your own AI images back into this. What I was going to do here was is you can also generate similar. So if you like an image, you can just tell it to make more of them. So if you want to make and generate centers like making variations of ones, you're like, oh yeah, this is good, but not quite right. And you're really just being like, make more for me until you find one that you like. And you can take one that you've edited and generate. And by the way, like
You know, style references, it does have its own. So, I mean, I can see what that does, get some sort of like vaporwave. Yeah, there we go. Got the vaporwave cat.
Oh my gosh, they're like running like people.
Because the cats will eat them. It looks like they're the same size.
So,
It was just so in yesterday because I was trying to prepare for this and going through those different styles and formats, you really had a lot of control over that. And you know, the cool things that people were showing how you could really easily create, you know, text or things like that you wanted to, you know, you could have text made out of cats. So you could say, welcome to class. Every letter was made out of a cat, right? That was
the question is, how far do you want to go down that rabbit hole while you're trying to like
exactly.
go into the infotainment? That was the word that was given to me when I first came here in 2012. Was to gear my classes in that direction. Yeah, I'm curious, like where. No, that's just taking to different programs on the web right there.
Yeah.
Did anybody
Go
create
back.
some images that they wanted to, that they had they could use? And you had,
I had some really fun cat ones. It was really bad at anatomy stuff though. I asked it to make me a nephron, which is like a microscopic part in the kidney, and it just gave me kidneys. And then when I tried to correct it and say like, no, not a whole kidney, just a nephron, it gave me like 2 kidneys squished together.
I wonder if you, like if you played with it and tried uploading a picture of a nephron, and then you needed it edited, or you needed something like
Yeah.
different color combination.
Can we upload actual pictures?
So that the
Yeah,
general.
Okay, so right here, so I think I had to back out of this.
Oh,
here a little
sure.
bit
There we go.
to get
Thank you. Yeah.
So this is generative fill.
Show them where.
How do you get to generate?
Yeah, so right here, I just came down and there was like various different tools right there. So this is
We run
text to image. And so this is generative fill, which you can get to from the generative AI aspect, but then you're just using their images right here. But if I come to text generative fill, this is what I was doing before. And so I can come in here and now I can upload one of my own images. And
that's where you can play with like the small edits.
I think this is more fun in groups, huh?
I mean, it put a reflection in there and everything.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
This is only tangentially related. The like Instagram reels that'll show like a pan of cinnamon rolls, but then all of a sudden they're like creatures that come to life. Like, what kind of software are people using for that?
That one, I'm not sure because I mean I definitely have noticed. I haven't looked into the video stuff
Okay.
per se, but I know like they've got like the baby mermaids is another one that's really
Yes.
popular out
I
there.
love them.
And yeah, it really like if you start looking at once you start making these, you start looking at your Facebook and Instagram feeds, you realize that how much of this sort of sponsored content or content is not like coming from your friends is not real.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna
Tell my mom.
Like, I mean, it this is the other thing too, is again, like, I mean, photography, since the very beginning, we have been staging and manipulating images, even if you say journalism is, not, biased or doesn't have a, subjective, it's like, oh, I just, there you go, only got 3 people in a room. All right, now I've got, 8 people in a room right here. So it's like, what, it's always had that, and people have been staging photographs forever. This just makes the tool much cleaner and more accessible in a way that it never has been before. But that's not really what you are here. But I mean, I think it's a question mostly of just like, but also like, what does this do for the ability to, kind of cut to the chase, so to speak, especially when you think about Cynthia's work right there. It's like, okay, how do I, at least, again, this is what I did with my capstone students. Like, how do I get to realize your project right there. I mean, I think the question is like, do you acknowledge this? And also just kind of like when you look at the images a little bit closer, you're like, okay, there's some serious problems right here too.
But they get the message across.
They get the message across.
And a lot of our students outside of photography are using these tools as a sketching tool for works that they then execute in some traditional media. They're maybe a painter or a printmaker, and they use text prompts in Midjourney and get basically a template for something that they use as a compositional guide when they're
painting or drawing.
Yeah, I mean, I have a student right now who's kind of using images and kind of like using Photoshop to kind of like put them together and like, there you go, I'm gone.
Wow.
I mean, and some of these tools really already existed in Photoshop. Like there were a lot of tools that were kind of doing this not as well. Sometimes you have to do in bits and pieces,
Yeah.
but it's gotten much more powerful with regards to what you can do.
You just erased it and then it replaced it. And that it just looks like you threw a rock in the pool and that's it. And it covers up all of the, I mean, I don't even see any artifacting where you could see where like you were. It's so clean.
Yeah, it's,
And it really lowers
if
that.
you, if you zoom in, you can see the
Sure.
difference.
And this image doesn't exist. This is an image that I made with my own images and trained in AI and open art. And then I took an image that I made in Firefly, reverse engineered it to just text, edited that text, and then fed that into a model that we had my own images. And then I used Photoshop to kind of make it the ratio I wanted. I mean, I'm also trying to make it look like it's uncanny too. Like, this is not a plant that exists right there, but yeah, this is, me doing my sort of research on like future environments and niche environments and what they look like, and trying to figure out like, can AI help me imagine a different, ecosystem? But I mean, there is that too of like what are the the kind of dangers, which is like you can make a lot of very believable fake images very quickly and very fast. And that's probably one reason why you're not supposed to be able to use any notable figures with it. But you can also hopefully be able to kind of like what the students are doing in the business of art class or the business of art project of the professional practice class, is to be able to at least create visualizations that then you can build upon to when you actually begin to refine that product right there, which I think is, you're making a pitch. You don't have the resources to make all those images there. And the biggest thing I tell people is acknowledge what you're doing, I think is the biggest thing. That's one thing I've been trying to instill with my students, right? There's acknowledging people are using AI tools. And we can start having a conversation of at what point in time is this a tool that is allowing you more time for your creativity? Or is this a tool in which, maybe we're questioning whether or not, it's creativity versus your creativity right there. And that's, again, one of the questions I ask them all the time. So, because I tell them like, unfortunately, the retouching jobs aren't coming back. Every corporation is going to use it. Now, the best thing to do is like, the bar was here, now the bar is here, which means you have to use these tools to get your bar here or higher. And I think that's the other thing to say, like, if people are using Canva for their presentation, and that's what's happening out there, and people are okay with it, then
Those
unfortunately,
presentations look real good.
they do.
But-
It makes the design, I don't know if our design faculty has really kind of embraced the fact that Canva,
It's slick and easy and fun.
terrifying.
Why is Canva terrifying?
Well,
Just what all you.
we have a
Can't-
large design and visual communication program in our department, so there.
So
That's
I mean,
basically
you start to,
just-
again, the thing about it is like, there's still the upper level jobs right there, but when you remove all of the entry level jobs, because it's all being done by AI, how do you get into that other job? I mean, that's a conversation.
Like I think about Susan Kerr, who designed all the typefaces for Macintosh operating systems. She was like Steve Jobs' personal assistant. She made all of his PowerPoint presentations. Like that was basically why she was hired as a graphic designer. Like, her job wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
She gave us Clarice the dog cow.
I know.
So,
She gave us what?
Where's the
you know, in
dog
the old print window that had that dog that would be oriented differently.
Oh.
That she designed
That's
that.
Claire the dog cow. We don't know if it's a dog or a
It says
cow.
moof.
Ah.
Anyway, but we think about like these people who had this very like menial position, like I'm making presentations for this person, but then they ended up designing all these typefaces and these really iconic elements because of that job they had. Like what happens when we eliminate those entry level positions. So
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, it
End on
is-
something
it-
positive, because we have to be.
Actually, I can throw a few ideas out here. This would be fascinating in the business school to prototype products, right? Or to have up students' games in PowerPoint or Canva or whatever medium, but also to make our presentations more appealing. The reason I asked about representation was I have tried very strategically to use images that represent our student body. It's hard to find them in the particular poses or contexts that you might want to have students. And so I didn't know how well it did at that.
I have not tried it, though, I mean, again, I'll use the photo historical reference right there. Timothy O'Sullivan, who, photographed the West, but also photographed the Civil War. One of the things he did when he photographed the aftermath of the Battle of Gettysburg was he had his assistants, first job for an assistant ever, drag bodies across the field in order to represent what he saw. Like he was like, he took a photograph and was like, okay, there's only one body here. Like this is atrocious. Like this can never happen again. How do I make a photograph of it? All right, folks, we're dragging bodies here. So there's photographs you see with bodies stacked, and so he staged that from what was there. And so I guess what I'm saying is like that's always a question right there. Like, I'm trying to make something that actually looks like the representation of what I'm doing right. As far as like how good it is, I don't know what to tell you because I haven't tried it before. I'm always very nervous personally whenever it becomes about representation of individuals, and I'm just always very concerned about that. Even with my students, I mean, I can spend like 3 days with them talking about how to properly represent skin tones. Get to the history. Like, I mean, this is my world of things right there. But again, like I said, I think when we think about these tools and when I introduce them to folks, it's like, is this, just helping you represent the reality that actually exists? Because sometimes a photograph, can't do or can't represent that. And that's the, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That's just the world we live in right now, where it's that malleable.
But when you use stock images, sometimes you just can't find the picture.
Well, and I think that's the thing right there. Is like if it,
I don't want only white students represented in my slides. Like it's not.
I mean, and frankly, I mean, again, like I said, I would say, look to see how well it does that. I mean, it is being trained on stock images, which Adobe Stock does have those kinds of images there. So.
And with that, I'm afraid I'm going to have to wrap it up. Thank you so much for your